Working in computer science is always very exciting, especially working in high-performance computing. My name is Ramin Yahyapour. I'm professor in computer science at the University of Göttingen, and I'm also managing director of GWDG, a joint compute center of Max Planck Society and the University of Göttingen.
A key customer for GWDG is the Max Planck Society, the third largest research institution in the world. Since its founding in 1948, the Society has produced 29 Nobel Prize winners in different areas. With research spanning many different disciplines, working in mathematics, computer science, chemistry, physics, and aerodynamics, processes have become more compute and data intensive. GWDG leverages AWS to scale services and enhance collaboration with researchers across the globe. The results are proving the value of the AWS cloud to research. It's science, not servers.
Please welcome to the stage Professor Dr. Ramin Yahyapour, Managing Director at GWDG.
Like I said, research. And you think about data and how we build up to where we're at. I think you do a far better job than me trying to articulate the amazing work that you do. So why don't I hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
First of all, thank you very much for having me, and it's great to be here in Sacramento. Yeah, what do we do? As shown in the video, I'm Managing Director of GWDG. Our mission is to enable, support top-level science. GWDG is a high-performance computing center in Germany and in Europe in general. We have a quite sophisticated, elaborated infrastructure to support science for high-performance computing. GWDG is one of the 9 national supercomputing centers that we have. We are also one of the 4 national AI service centers, so we offer infrastructure access for scientists in whole Germany to accelerator technology, and we are also active in national initiatives regarding research data management. As shown in the video, Max Planck Society is our top-level research organization in Germany. These are the Nobel Prize contenders, so our task is to support them and work and their research effectively. If we take one example in which we collaborate with AWS currently, it's a project called Tree of Life, which is a very data-intensive activity where collected information from genomics, proteomics are put together and made accessible and searchable for the whole world. So it's a collaborative activity in there. And it's, as mentioned, quite data heavy. So we are talking here about more than 20 petabytes of data. And what we would like to support is that this whole data is searchable and easily accessible. And for that, we collaborate with AWS as an extension to our existing infrastructure that we have on premise.
And you're being a little humble, actually. We did a recent announcement in May. Max Planck announced the formation of the Science Hub. It's the first Amazon Science Hub existing outside of the US, and it will focus on driving AI research development throughout Germany. And we're super honored to have you fly all the way from Germany to come talk to the team. It's amazing the work that you're doing. I've got a bunch of questions for you. When you think about supporting research and you think about the opportunity, can you tell us how AWS provides CDWG researchers with access to the open data sets, funding, and training to help accelerate that pace of innovation?
As mentioned, we have significant infrastructure on our side. So we have supercomputing facilities on site, but it's great to collaborate with AWS to complement our existing service portfolio that we have. AWS has a very broad set of tools and services, as you mentioned before, which very much complement to what we have. If we look on our researchers, we see general trends occurring. In the past, supercomputing was, well, a tool for experts. Let's say people from physics, from natural science. They understand the technology very well. They understand the supercomputing very well. They understand the hardware. If we look now, we have with AI and ML technologies that are interesting for a much broader audience. It's something which is horizontal in research, from medicine on one side to social science, humanities on the other side. And these are very often not expert users. So It's our task at GWDG to help them to get access as quickly as possible to the tools and services they need to do their science. And another trend that we see is that collaboration becomes much more a topic, that for the big experiments, breakthrough research nowadays, this is not something that happens at one site with a small group of researchers. This is very often linked to large experiments where people share data, bring data together. As an example, I was mentioning here, which is a large data set where many contribute to and many use that data for their research.
You know, we talk about personas when we think about researchers, and you're right. You have the researcher that could manage through a workspace to those that are actually looking for that supercomputer type of environment. And you know, you've mentioned you are a large supercomputing center, and your main focus has been traditional infrastructure. Why do you consider AWS a relevant collaborator, and what benefits do you see for both your organization and the research community of Max Planck and the university itself?
So for the supercomputing activities, we have the infrastructure, and I think we manage that very well to give access to our researchers, help them to use that infrastructure very well. If we look at AWS, it is a rich tool set, many services and infrastructure, which complements very well to what we do. In many cases, it wouldn't be cost efficient or time efficient to come up with strategies to replicate AWS services on our site, especially if some researchers only need for a temporal time access to those services. And scalability is also a topic. If we see quickly changing demand, that's something which with our traditional infrastructures, we cannot support that as well. So that's something where AWS would be also a great complement to support that.
You know, when you think about the journey to the cloud for researchers and really some of the policy challenges that when you're looking at funding from governments, you know, were there any specific initiatives from the European policymakers that helped you support some of those initiatives themselves?
We have many initiatives in Europe supporting scientists. One which is very relevant to us right now is the European Open Science Cloud. That's a real European approach to come up with a set of services that support all researchers in Europe to give them access to the best suited services. And they started 1 year ago with a tender process, which is something new. In the past, you got funding for certain activities, but now the model they are choosing is a tender process where we as GWDG partnered with AWS to jointly come up with a concept for a service in that infrastructure. And there, AWS was interesting for us, particularly because the trusted research environment that AWS also presented 1.5 years ago is something which is very interesting and relevant, because for many use cases we are looking at, we have regulatory requirements when and where someone has access to data, and there the trusted research environment is something that helps us.
You know, we hear about it from a security perspective. I'm sure those data sets are rich and access is important. Tell me a little bit about the security posture and how you partnered with AWS from a secure cloud perspective.
For this trusted research environment, we are looking for many different use cases. One was shown here, and in many of those, the question regarding data privacy, data security is a very important topic. And to support that, we need typically a separation of concerns. We need answers for the regulatory requirements to support those experiments. And in the trusted research environment setup, we have that. We are generating jointly with AWS a data lake. In that data lake, we provide certain sets on tools where part of those tools are encrypted through a key exchange, where the keys remain with us as an intermediary for our scientists. And we can argue against the regulatory agencies we have to adhere to, that the separation is in that sense that as a cloud provider, AWS has not access to the full data set, which is relevant in some cases.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to the researcher experience, right? So it's going to continue to change and evolve. Assets and access to opportunities to do different things. When you think about that outlook and the collaboration that we hope to continue to have with Max Planck, what do you believe cloud computing, how do you think that'll actually impact researchers for the future?
Research is collaboration, and research is also competition. It's a question who has results first, and that's part of our mission to really support our researchers. And their cloud is a tool, an approach to get to those results quicker than in the past. And I assume that the collaboration we currently have for those use cases is something we can replicate for other use cases in the future, so that the access to those services are becoming easier. I mean, if you look on cloud in general, it's of course easy to use, but if you're not a cloud expert, not a cloud architect, it takes some effort to really understand how to set up a tenant, how to configure services, how the accounting and billing is done. And that's something that we as a service center, as a science service center, are going to support. And as part of the collaboration, the first thing we did, we started setting up a landing zone in which we can combine the different projects, the different tenants that we have in our cases, and are capable of supporting that approach. And what I should also mention is that for this European initiative, we have an existing framework contract that makes it quite easy for us to use AWS services. It's a legal framework, so it's linked to a tender that happened, I think, 2 years ago, that gives us a full access to the AWS services.
When I think about the audience, we have everything from research leaders to PIs to university CIOs. Whether it's to support the individual or more of an enterprise research environment, what would you give the audience by ways of a couple of recommendations of how to start or where to start?
As mentioned before, I think it takes some initial effort to approach those services, and that's something that could be speed up if you try to contact people who have an understanding, have a support structure. And in most countries, as in Germany, we have those science centers that are operating infrastructure, operating services that can help you on that journey. And that's something I would recommend for people to do. Said that, I would assume that even in the mid-long-term future, we are talking about a hybrid scenario. That's what I think will be the best suited choice for many research activities, where you have part of the infrastructure on premise, those parts which you understand quite well, you have a good understanding what you need in the mid and long term, but you complement that with cloud services like AWS to have a full set of whatever you need at a certain point in time very quickly to access it, and have all the scalability options in place. And also, as mentioned before, the collaboration aspect is something where cloud services can be very effective. It's much easier to provide access to many people, to share data, exchange data, have a general data space in which they can join their different information. So that's something I would assume in the future will continue and will be used much more in many disciplines.
Well, we look forward to continuing our partnership, and I want to say a very big thank you for taking the time to come out to Sacramento and talk to the teams. Thank you.
My pleasure.